Welcome back. Today we're going to be focusing on GDP calculations. So you do have a worksheet paired with this video. If you can follow these steps, you should be able to complete the worksheet, and we'll talk about what that worksheet entails and also what's expected of you through GDP calculations. So through the slides, we see GDP is an easy way to measure an economy's basically their income, what they're producing. Again, GDP is looking at what you produce within your given borders. So that's GDP. There's different parts that are comprised of the GDP. For example, up here we have the formula. So Y is another way to see output, or GDP in this case. C, I, G, and X. So you should know each one of these for the exam. We'll start with C. C is consumption. So this is what people spend on as a consumer product. We have I, which is investment. This includes materials used to produce your product, as well as housing. Housing is a form of investment. G is government spending or government purchases. So when the government spends money, you'll see this value increase. And then lastly, we have net exports. This is pertaining to trade. And it's important to know it's exports minus imports. A lot of students, they usually forget this second part of the formula. Anytime you see net exports, it's exports minus imports. So for the United States, as we've talked about in class, we import much more than we export. So if this value is higher, this means NX, the overall value, is going to have a negative value. There's an imbalance. So when we see imbalance, that's where we get the trade imbalance or trade surplus, trade deficit. That's a big way to see it. So know the formula, know each part. The slides do a good job on talking about what is included in each one of these categories. Okay, so today we're going to do GDP calculations, we're going to talk about nominal, and we're going to talk about real GDP. So the first thing you should do is write out this table. You should follow along with me. We have 3 years, 2016, 2017, and 2018. Now we have two products that we're looking at, just two. We have hot dogs, which is HD, and hamburgers, which is HB. So HD and HB, those are two products, hot dogs and hamburgers. We have the price of hot dogs, we have the quantity of hot dogs, we have the price of hamburgers, we have the quantity of hamburgers. So we're going to do some calculations with this. Now there's a couple different types of GDP that you should be familiar with. One being nominal GDP, the other being your real GDP. Now there's a difference between the two. Nominal GDP does not take into account inflation. So here we're just looking at current prices and current quantities. We're seeing how it changes from year to year. Now with real GDP, we do take into account inflation. By doing this, we have a constant price. So we'll talk about a quick trick to know when to use nominal GDP and when to use real GDP. So we're going to first start by calculating nominal. So again, we're looking at current prices and current quantities. So the formula for this would just be price of G1. G1 stands for good one, multiplied by the quantity of good one, and you close the parentheses. Now you're going to do this as many times, or as many times as many products as you have. So here we have two products, we have hot dogs and hamburgers, so we're only going to do two of these. Now it's going to be the price of good 2 plus the quantity of good 2. Now we could do this for an endless amount of objects or products, but in this case we're only looking at 2. This is just to make it much more simpler. There's a glare. So yeah, this is what we're going to do. We have two goods, so G1, G2, and you have the price and quantity of each product, all given by this table. So we're going to start off by calculating nominal GDP in each year. So 2016, 2017, 2018. Basically, you're just plugging in these numbers into this formula. And we'll walk through this for each year. So we'll start with 2016. So the number you're going to plug in is 1 multiplied by 100 plus 2 times 50. So I got these numbers from this graph right here. We're just looking at this first row. So it's 1 times 100, that's 1 good, and you're going to multiply 2 times 50 and add those two together. So this is what you get, and your nominal GDP in 2016 is going to be 200. Now at this point in the video, you can pause the video and go on ahead just to check your answers, but for 2016, it's going to be 200, and we're going to do the same setup for each single year. So now we'll do 2017. Now we're looking at the row associated with 2017. So 2, 150, 3, 100. So it's 2 times 150 plus our second good, which is 3 times 100. And our nominal GDP is 600. So again, remember, nominal GDP does not take into account inflation. That's the big indicator between nominal and real. Nominal is not taking into account inflation whatsoever. Okay, and then the last one, it's 2018. It's going to be 3 times 200 plus 4 times 150. And this is going to give you 1200. That is your nominal GDP in your last year. So 200, 600, and 1200. All right, so now we're going to calculate real GDP. Real GDP is where you do take into account inflation. So with this, what we're going to have is a constant price in a certain year. So the key indicator, knowing when you need to use your real GDP formula, is when the base year is given to you. So if a base year is ever given to you, you should automatically know that prices are going to stay constant in a given year. So in this case, 2016 is our base year. We're going to use the prices for 2016. That's not going to change. So 1 and 2. Those are the two prices that stay constant throughout our calculations. So I'll give an example of the formula. So let's just say we're doing 2016. The formula would be price 1 times Q1 plus price 2 times Q2. And these are the goods. So if we do, I'll just redo it. So price of good 1 multiplied by the quantity of good 1 plus price good 2 multiplied by the quantity of good 2. Now, this is where we still use the same prices. So if we were to do 2017, it would still be the price of good 1. Again, this is your base year. So those are the base year prices. They're going to stay the same, multiplied by the quantity of So it's going to be the price of good 1 multiplied by the quantity of good 1. Now the difference here is that we're using a new row. So we're looking at 2017. Price stays the same. When you use real GDP, the main thing you're measuring is a change in quantity. So anytime you see real GDP, associate that with the change in output. So again, we would do the same thing here. Price of good 2 multiplied by the quantity of good 2. But we're still using the same prices. So that's just the formula. So now when we do the actual calculations for real GDP, you'll see how it differs. So we'll start with 2016. It's going to be 1 times 100 plus 2 times 50. So 1 times 100 plus 2 times 50, which we know from earlier is 200. Now we're going to do 2017. And remember, we're using our base year prices. So 1 and 2 are going to stay the same. The only thing that's going to change is your quantity over time. So it's going to be 1 times 150 plus 2 times 100, and you are going to get 600. Oh, sorry. You're going to get 350. So again, we're using the same price. It's going to multiply by the base year. Now we're going to multiply this by our next year, and then it's going to be our last year. Same goes here. Now, whatever your base year is, sometimes I can give you the first year as your base year, sometimes it'll be the last year as your base year. It's important to know this for the next step after the real GDP calculations. We'll talk about that in a bit. Before we get there, we'll do 2018. So again, it's 1 multiplied by 200 plus 2 times 150. And the answer to this is going to be 500. So these should be the answers to your real GDP. Again, price is staying constant based on our base year. Our base year prices is 1 and 2, which is given by our graph, and you're just going to multiply it by the quantity. Now, real GDP takes into account inflation. We're controlling for inflation, and we're measuring a change in output. That's what real GDP measures, just a change in quantity. All right, the next thing we're going to look at is GDP Deflator. Now, this is a way to measure a change in an economy. So are prices increasing? Are we growing? Are we not growing? Are we shrinking? This is another good measure to use. And we need both our real and our nominal GDP. So that'll be next. All right, so now we're going to talk about our GDP Deflator. We have our formula. It's nominal GDP divided by real GDP multiplied by 100. Now, this is always going to give you an index. The reason why we use indexes, it's easier to measure change through this index, and we're also going to use the growth rate formula through this to see are we seeing inflation, deflation, hyperinflation, and so forth. So the GDP deflator is a very good measure that you can use for different countries and different time periods. It's a really good measure that we use in economics. So you have all the values. So you should be able to calculate for 2016, 2017, and 2018. So we'll start with 2016, and we'll show you a cool trick. So 2016, the nominal GDP was 200, and our real GDP was 200. And if we multiply by 100, our answer is going to be 100. Now, the cool trick here is whatever your base year is, the GDP deflator in that is always going to be 100. That's because you're using the prices in that year. It's constant. It's always going to be the same value. 1 times 100 will be 100. So for 2017, it's going to be 600 divided by 350 multiplied by 100, and this equals 171. So you do the math and you get 171. So the reason why we use indexes in economics, it's easier to visualize the percent change. So from 100 to 171, the percent change has been 71%. If you don't believe me, you can do the math. We'll do it in a bit. But for right now, that's what you need to know, that it's easier to measure change between these two variables, especially from your base year. So your base year to your next year, the difference is 71. 71 divided by 100 is 0.71. You multiply that by 100, you get 71%. So we've seen an increase in overall prices by 71%. So we've been growing in this case. All right, 2018, it's 1,200 divided by 500 multiplied by 100, and you get 240. Now you're not going to compare from 2016 to 2040. You're going to compare 2017 to 2018. So the two numbers you're going to compare is 240 and 171. Yes, there's an increase, but it's important to know what this percent increase is, or how much have we grown from 171. So that will be our next step. All right, so after you get your GDP deflator, what you're going to do is use your growth rate formula. So the formula is as such. So it's value 2 minus value 1 divided by value 1 multiplied by 100. So you would use your GDP deflator numbers, which were, again, 2016 was 100, 2017 was 171, 2018 it was 240. Now you're going to calculate the growth rate for each one, so going from 16 to 17 and then 17 to 18. So if we start with 16 to 17, it's 171 is our value 2. It's always going to be your larger value or your the year that's closest to you. So from 2016 to 2017, 2017 is closer to us. So 171 minus 100 divided by 100 multiplied by 100 equals 71%. So overall, prices have increased by 71% from 2016 to 2017. Now, if we go from 17 to 18, it's 170. Oh, I'm sorry. From 2017 to 2018, 2018 is the year closest to us, so it's 240 minus 171 divided by 171 multiplied by 100, and you should get somewhere between 4.2%. Now, what this is saying is from 17 to 18, you see our overall prices decrease. Now, this could happen for various amount of reasons. You can attribute this to job loss. You can attribute this to increasing production costs. There's different things that happen throughout the economic world that could be attributed to this. It's not just one single thing. But based on just price and quantity, we see that prices probably have slowed down. They haven't increased as much. So yeah, this is your growth rate formula. This is what you need to use for your worksheet, as well as measuring change in any point in time. So you can use this formula for a various amount of calculations. It's not just for GDP. It's just showing the rate of growth from one year to the next, or from one time period to another time period. Okay, so that's all for GDP calculations. You're going to need this for your exam as well as your worksheets and other assignments in the near future. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. Join in on the weekly Zoom chats. By all means, I'm here to help you guys. If you guys have any recommendations, or if you didn't like this setup of this video, or you did like the setup, by all means, let me know. Other than that, thank you guys. Good luck.